/events. And better yet, you can become a member of Letterform Archive, stay in the loop, get cool perks, and help keep great lectures like this one today going. So, yay, welcome to our fall Letterform lecture series of 2021. Letterform lectures are co-presented by the Letterform Archive and the SFPL main library. Letterform Archive is a nonprofit institution housing over 75,000 works of graphic design history. We are dedicated to the art and the craft of the letterform. And we would like to thank Adobe for generously sponsoring the video recording of this lecture series. You can view all Letterform lectures online soon after they happen. Just check our website, letterformarchive.org. Okay, we are thrilled to host Neebinnaukzhik Southall, who will be speaking on the graphic design and lettering of Angel DeCora, who is a Ho-Chunk designer, artist, illustrator, and educator, the turn of last century. And Neebin is a member of the Chippewas of Rama First Nation. And Neebin is a graphic designer, an artist, a photographer, and a writer based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where they run their small creative business, Neebin Studios. And they are concerned with representing Native peoples in a positive and empowering way through their work. Neebin also maintains a list of Indigenous graphic designers housed at the Native Graphic Design Project. And Neebin believes that design work created by Native people is a vital part of their tribal sovereignty. So, everyone, without further ado, please let's give a big welcome to Neebin Southall. Take it away, Neebin.
All right. Hello, everybody. Did you want to put my video on for a second, Grendel?
That's Skilla.
I got you. Hang on one
second. Sorry. Let me know when you're ready. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm impressed with how many people are joining from all over. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you, Grendel and Skilla, for your work on putting this event together. Thanks so much for being here. I guess I'll delve right in. So I'm just going to go ahead and share the screen. And is that full size for everybody?
Yep.
Awesome. Alrighty, so today I'll be looking at Angel DeCora's design and lettering work, and looking at her art as well. For a little quick background on Angel DeCora, she was a Ho-Chunk artist, designer, and educator. She was born in Nebraska in 1871, though I have seen an earlier date than that. I know sometimes people did fib on their ages, but she died in Northampton, Massachusetts in 1919. So she was in her late 40s when she passed away, which is pretty early. I wish I could have seen what she would have done next. She was taken from her family, basically stolen away and sent to a Native boarding school, or sent to the Hampton Normal and Agricultural Institute. At the time, it was very common for children to be taken away from their families to be assimilated. So that's a very important thing to note about her life experience. It was a very, very difficult time where there's a lot of this forced assimilation and a lot of shame around culture, where Native people had to assimilate to the dominant society of the United States and Canada. And so that is a big part of her history. And so she went to these, was schooled in these different institutions But she really made a success for herself, you know, being a Native woman at the time. And she also had some French heritage as well. So she's also, you know, had a diverse heritage, but, you know, was understood as being a Native woman. She went to the Burnham Classical School for Girls after Hampton. She later went to the Smith College Art Department and studied with Dwight W. Tryon. And, you know, while she was at Smith College, she also had a custodianship job with the Smith College Art Gallery. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, she studied at the Drexel Institute with Howard Pyle, where she studied illustration under him. And she went to Cowles Art School in Boston, studying with Joseph DeCamp. And she also studied with Frank Benson and Edmund C. Tarbell at the Museum of Fine Arts. Anyway, she was also part of the first conference of the Society of American Indians. And in this big picture here, you can see how she would, you know, typically be dressed. She did also write a piece for the proceedings of the first conference, and she kind of goes into, you know, her philosophy and whatnot. She did educate people, and on the left here is an illustration that she had done of a Thunderbird, which I believe was based on an existing artwork, if I recall correctly. You know, for a lot of her promotional imagery, she had used this particular photo where she's dressed up wearing a plain style dress and regalia, you know, which isn't her particular cultural background, but this is a very popular image that was used. And she was profiled very heavily in the press. You know, a lot of times there was, even as accomplished as she kind of was dealing with the two layers of sexism and also racism, where you know, some of her stuff wouldn't necessarily be, I don't think people really understood what she was doing at the time. And they didn't fully respect, you know, there'd be a lot of backhanded compliments in the press, but she still was one of the most widely known Native artists at the time. And this was a piece, her obituary appeared in the magazine, The Outlook. These are some earlier paintings of hers. You know, there's not a lot of color paintings that are, you know, available online to be seen, but I thought I would share a few of them. And so there's a piece on the left, Lafayette's headquarters, 1898, and then on the right, an untitled watercolor. And then here, I just came across this recently, a oil on canvas piece that is with the Museum of Nebraska Art, and a really great portrait of her stepsister, Josephine Sampson Gray Hair. One of her first illustrative projects was with Harper's New Monthly magazine, and she actually did another story as well called The Sick Child. And I don't have photographs of that, but these are scans from a magazine that I own. And she had done several illustrations, very sympathetic illustrations of this female character. And you can see on the left, you know, the girl holding her hair and her jewelry. And then on the right here is an illustration called The Dancing Girls. And, you know, all this illustrates aspects of the story, and you can see a little bit more of the work here. And one of the first books she worked on was Old Indian Legends with her friends at Carlisle, who was Yankton, Dakota. And I believe that she had illustrated this cover. And she also had done several illustrations for the interior, which I'll go ahead and show you. Illustrating different stories that were retold by her friend. One thing I kind of like here, so there's this character, Tommy, who is a trickster character, and she's illustrated him with these little pointy ears in a kind of elvish way. Some more illustrations, so quite a bit of work on this book. One of my favorites here is this illustration of field mice dancing in a circle on the left here. And you can see that she is illustrating people that are from Plains cultures within these illustrations. And I wanted to call out this one illustration here. He blew the water all over the people. Like, there's a lot of humor in this close up here where you can, like, people are a little shocked. The eyes are big, like what's going on. And so it's fun to see that aspect of humor in the work. Another earlier book, and I believe the first printing of this one was in 1902, was Wigwam Stories by Mary Catherine Judd. Now, I do want to point out that the cover illustration, she's depicted a teepee, which is not the right form. You know, a wigwam is a house that's typically made with frames, poles out of trees, and, you know, with bark around the structure. So she depicted a teepee form, which is really something that's more in the plains. But I think it's worth noting that at the time, you know, she didn't have the internet, she didn't have access to all of the imagery that we do today. And so, you know, she's working with what, you know, she has. And also, you know, ideas at the time. And you can see that she did an illustration for the frontispiece. And then I really would like to point out this beautiful border design that she had done. And you can see her little signature on the bottom here. And that design really draws from patterns, could be drawn from patterns of beadwork, or even something like a parfleche design. But I think it's a very creative border motif example that she's done. And you can see this up a little bit closer here as well. And you'll see the signature a lot in her work. So that's something to keep an eye out for. So for this book, you know, she had done several illustrations. You know, she had done several paintings for this piece, and then also some pen and ink drawings as well for the interior. There's a lot of headings as well that she illustrated, and I'm not going to show all of them here right now, but I did want to draw attention to this bayou that she has depicted. Now, I'm Ojibwe, and she has illustrated several Ojibwe stories in this book. And this is a little hammock cradle that is used for children. And I really love this one because it is something that when I was a kid, I don't think that my mom had used one of these when we were a baby per se, although I don't have the memory, obviously. But when we were young kids, in the backyard, we'd have a line of for drying clothes, and then she would put blankets over and put us in as little kids and then push us and sing to us. So this is one of my favorite illustrations that she's done in the book, and I thought I'd share that. But, you know, a big part of this particular project are the initials that she had done for the book. And quite a bit of them, you know, relate to the stories in some way. So for the A that she's illustrated for The Woman in the Moon, you can see that she's included a full moon form, you know, a crescent moon, and those crescents become the A with a woman inside of that A. And then for Opochi, the robin redbreast, she has a little bird perched on a branch of an A. And for the Good Bear and the Lost Boy, she creates an A form out of a pen and ink drawing of tree branches with a bear and a boy underneath it. And then for this Mondamin piece, who, you know, Mondamin means corn in Ojibwe. She has created an A form with two stalks of corn coming together to form the A. And you can see that a little bit more closely here. And these are a couple more A's as well. You have, for this piece, the Indian's eye training, you have a man staring out underneath an A that's just, you know, drawn very typically, but with a border motif. And then the blue heron and the wolf, you have a wolf coming out under these branch forms. And here's a, you know, closer picture of that. She did a number of other letters. Like, a huge part of this work shows the level of work that she did on the letter forms is a significant part of this book. And you can see in here for the eye, the prairie dandelion, she's put little dandelions around this eye on the left. For the star that never moves, she is referencing aspects of the story by referencing this woman within the eye, creating this frame for her. And then for how the cave people found dry land on the earth, she has this eye with this bird motif, and I presume that it's a Thunderbird in this situation. The story, talks about lightning and talks about a shield, and it seems like these are design elements that are inspiring her work in this case. And then on the right, there's a book to illustrate, Wigwam stories books in the Indian language. And here's some close-up shots of that. You can see the detail of her work. The animal on the left is really, quite interpretive, right? She's taking this necklace type form and using that to represent an M. On the end here, again, there's these beams coming together with a little campfire below. And this O is one of my favorites. You have a young woman seated in the O itself. And so it serves as this frame looking into this forest. And again, with the story being an Ojibwe story, the girl who became a pine, it makes a lot of sense that here she's depicted a forest and, put the individuals there, though the moccasins aren't really quite Ojibwe, but, I think we can forgive that. Here's another initial that was done for one of the stories, and I really think it's interesting. It's almost like it looks like brass tacks, on this end, and very much looks like some of the weaponry or dance sticks that people might have. There's a quick little drawing of a moose to go with the M, which illustrates the story. And then there's, here's an S with an illustration, with some star motifs to go with the story. And these different T's, you can see how she's done different T's for the stories, a little chipmunk resting on a T to go with the story, an origin story of the Crane tribe. And you can see, again, she's using the T as a frame for this crane that's flying. And then in the next one, she has a little T that's just placed with next to a tree, which goes fits with the story. And then you have how the Iroquois built their log forts. And this one's kind of interesting. Like again, you have these teepees in the background, which for the region, this is not something that they would have in that region. They have their longhouses and other kinds of buildings, but it's kind of an interesting play of different forms there. And you can see a little more details again of these line drawings. And on the right are a couple more T's. You have the North Star and Ojibwe story, and you have this little figure who's pointing out to the story. And again, it's relating to the story because the character is like a baby, but an old person. So that references that story there. And then for this other Ojibwe story, there's this very interesting T-shaped form. And I'm not quite sure, what some of the inspirations might be. My, guess would be something like perhaps, a ribbon design or beadwork informing that shape, or perhaps a birch bark cutout. It's a very intriguing shape. And here's some more examples of T's. There's a lot of those in the stories, of course. And so on the left, you have a kind of shield form on the left there with the feathers hanging down, a rug form coming in front of this other T on the second one. On the third one, it's just like a pot kind of coming on top of the T. And these ones are a little less creative in that way. And then on the right is a T kind of coming over these two women in the story. And I just want to point out, like with these books that are older, they do use some racist language and have some demeaning language. I do want to point out that the word squaw is not something you should be using. It's really a mangling of Algonquin words. And so the word kwe in Ojibwe means woman, right? And so it's this word that got kind of mangled and ended up being applied to all these different tribal and cultural groups. And so that's something to be aware of. If you're doing some history, just, take some of it with a grain of salt. Some of the information will not be accurate or appropriate. This W, illustrating the Thunderbird of the Dakotas, is one of my favorites. You have these lightning strikes coming down, forming a W with a Thunderbird figure underneath. And this is, like, I think, one of her more creative ones, and certainly one of my favorites. And then on the right, you have a Y illustrated with various weaponry and seemingly a shield and whatnot. So Letterform Archive had me write about the Indians book. And so I'm going to give, a look at the lettering within the Indians book, which was a major project that Angel DeCora took on. And the cover design is not actually by her, but by a Plains artist. And but I do believe that the lettering on the spine is likely hers, though I don't know that for sure. So I had written about this, so be sure to visit the website and look at the article I have for Letterform Archive. Some of this will go over the information that is on there, though I won't delve too deeply into it. This is a title page that Angel had created for the Indians book. And you can see this really wonderful border design that she once again, brings into her work with this eagle motif on the top. And so when she was illustrating her section, she created lettering for the Lake Indians, Winnebago, and that is her tribal background. And when they saw it, they're like, well, we got to have her do more. So she started to design more things. But I did want to point out the innovation of the lettering here. It really it echoes the beadwork strip that she is referencing in the illustration above. And this is something that you can see with, beadwork designs, these different little shapes and where it's pulling from. I myself had referenced beadwork for a border design that I had done a few years ago, which you can see on the bottom right here. And so you can see how, our cultural forms can really inform all different kinds of lettering, if we're creatively inspired by them. And, for the Wabanaki lettering, it seems to me that there's, this one's much more whimsical, these sort of plant forms for the Wabanaki. And that really seemed to be hearkening to birch bark boxes. An example is up on the right here, a piece by Toma Joseph, who's Passamaquoddy, a box cover. And here is a design that she had done to correspond with an illustration by a Cheyenne artist. And so for here, you see these crescents that echo the horns of the bison. And then the border motif really seems to hearken to perhaps blanket strips or quill work strips. For this one, there's a lot of different things going on with the Cheyenne lettering, accompanying the illustration by another Cheyenne artist. And, there's geometric shapes happening. You have these really interesting, for the second E, you have these really interesting little forms that really seem to echo bone beads as, represented by the photo of Eagle Louise, who is Dakota Oglala on the right. For Arapaho, there's these forms where you see these little white rectangles, and that really seems to reference quill work wrap quill work. And there's an example on the bottom right here by an artist with Beyond Buckskin. And so that photo comes from the Beyond Buckskin website. And you can see where she's taking these cultural forms and reinterpreting them. And then for the outside border, you know, it really does echo a parfleche design, which is a painted design on rawhide, and on these boxes that are used and containers that are used to store things. And on the upper right here is a contemporary designer, Sadie Redwing, and you can see how she's used the parfleche to inspire her own design. Here is an illustration and lettering that is very much informed by the cradle board that is illustrated. So you have these wood beams, pieces of wood coming out to form a K or the N in the case, and then the structure of some of the other letters is drawn by the geometry of the beadwork. You know, this one's pretty interpretive. So the art is by Charles James Nowell, known as Clawlish, and she looked at the shapes and forms here, and you know, you can see like where she's drawing some of these forms from that. Now, I think an artist today that is from this background would probably be able to create lettering that is much more in keeping with the structure and language of form line. However, you know, it's interesting to see how she interpreted these forms herself by looking at them, right? And so, you know, you see these ovoid forms, all these sort of like little details that she's pulling from. And then on the right, you can see are some examples of form line design as used by artists today. Accompanying an illustration of a basket by Ataloya is this really innovative lettering where she takes the swooping forms and incorporates them into the lettering. So you can see like that sort of jagged line that's going into the center of the basket. It is seen in the M and the A and you know, and the eye as well. Like that eye is a really interesting interpretation of an eye. And so, you know, she's taking those motif elements to do this. I just want to make a note that a more correct or a more preferred term for Pima is Odom, I believe. So that's the preferred term. And for this Apache Indian illustration, this is like, you know, very kind of a fanciful take on the inspiration, you know, some of these jagged forms with the dancer, you know, are appearing in the N, you know, these broad lines seem to be pulling from the crown of the crown dancer as well. And for the Southwestern Indians lettering plate, you should see that she's pulling from, in the border, she is pulling from really ancient pottery to create this design. And I have an example on the right of a very old ancestral Pueblo mug. And, you know, the lettering too is, you know, very interesting and likely inspired by Pueblo pottery. And you can see some more examples of this, some lettering accompanying some pottery patterns by Emilia, who is Sunni. And on the right, you can see a bowl by Sofia Medina from Zia Pueblo, where you can see some of these motifs and how they might relate culturally. For the Pueblo Indians lettering, you know, I believe that she was looking at the buildings of the Southwest. And so in the background, you know, you have the Pueblo building forms, right? And then on the right, you have, you know, an example of a church that was built in Taos Pueblo. And I think that some of these step forms are informed by the buildings of the region. And here we have very interesting butterfly pottery design, which influenced the border motifs on the top and bottom. And then for the Hopi Indians lettering, I really do believe that's drawn from the way some of the methods of painting and forms that are within Hopi culture. So on the right, you have Kachina Doll by Henry Shelton, and you can see on the kilt form that there's certain designs there that would be, within textiles, right? And so it seems like there's some references that are being pulled from there. There's a couple more title pages and caption, a couple more title pages from the Indians book, and I've grabbed a few of them here. And you can see like her creativity to accompany, this warrior on a horse. And I'd like to bring attention to the design for Navajo Indians in the middle. At the time, when this was done, the whirling log motif didn't have the same kind of association with Nazism, because this is the sort of form of the arms to each other, draw from Navajo culture, Navajo ceremonial practices, sand paintings. And so I won't get too much into that, but I did just want to, make a little note of that those forms are referencing, some sacred beliefs. And then on the right is a illustration for Pawnee Indians. And it's interesting, here, like with Navajo, she's doing this vertical format, which she had done with a couple of the other ones as well. And this to me seems to be very inspired by, beadwork forms, the geometry of painted forms, and perhaps even, quill work. And again, with these two Southwestern tribal lettering pages for San Juan, Acoma, and the one in Laguna, there are references to Pueblo pottery designs. So, she had done more books as well. And so she had done this illustration here where you have one boy comforting another boy who has just arrived at a boarding school. And this is something that she is intimately familiar with, having been taken away from her family without consent. Or without her own consent, and she had experienced this, and so that grief is something that she did depict in this illustration. And I think it's a very powerful piece. This newly arrived boy, he will end up being like the boy on the right, with this European uniform. So Angel DeCora was hired at a boarding school herself in Carlisle, and became a instructor for the Native Indian Art Department. And so I wanted to show this. So these particular examples come from the Indian Craftsman, a magazine by Indians published by the Carlisle Indian School. And so she was hired to teach Native students, and she brought her own kind of perspective of education where, she wanted to be proud of all of the cultural traditions of Native people and to, kind of instill that within her students. And so that was something where she's like, okay, how to be a designer and how to use these different motifs and reinterpret them in different ways, whether, it might have been something on like home goods around the house, right? Like curtains and the like, and, thinking about how to apply these different cultural motifs onto different objects. And she created this letter here. You can see this A where it looks like a rug, but it also, looks a lot like Plains beadwork as well, coming to this. And so the really interesting thing about the Indian Craftsman is that, as you can kind of see here, the borders, initial letters, sketches, headings, cover pages are the work of the Native Indian Department under the supervision of Angel DeCora's. Angel DeCora. And, and her husband as well. She had married a young man who was, I think, 15 years younger than her. And he had pretended to be Native, but really wasn't, but he was very involved and was a very good artist. And so he actually worked with her in the department too on some of these things. So quite a few of the publications involve art that he had done, and presumably art by her as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of work that, when I was looking at, necessarily had some of the student artist credit, but I did want to show some of the borders here that are attributed to students of the Carlisle Native Indian Art Department. And very, I would say, looks very similar to like beadwork and weaving designs. And really harkens to some of those designs, border designs that Angel had done earlier on. And there's a couple of pictures from, the same publications, and you can kind of see what they were working with. What I really want to draw your attention to are these pictures where you can see that there's some design motifs being broken down on the chalkboards. And so you see these students are working with different design elements. And I think that's really interesting, right? Because Angel really is thinking from a design perspective. Angel DeCora and her husband, William Dietz, who he went by Lone Star, and pretended to be Plains artist, but he was a pretty good artist, and so they've done some collaborations together, as I mentioned, and these are examples of paintings that they had collaborated on together. And I believe the cover was also done by Angel DeCora. And here's another cover. So the Indian Craftsman ended up being renamed to the Red Man due to copyright or conflict concerns with another publication. And here you see this portrait of a nurse taking care of a man. And, it's like, a very gentle portrait. And this was in 1913 that this was done. And here you can see the Carlisle printing department. So a lot of the students were working, with design, essentially, production and design, according to what they say anyhow. With another book that Angel DeCora and her husband worked on was The Little Buffalo Robe. And here you can see some illustrations. I don't know who did the cover, so, I don't know which one of them it was, but on the right, there's another collaborative painting. And then here are, paintings of Angel DeCora illustrating the story. There's a lot of tenderness on the far right here. Of a man with a child, and then this motion of buffalo falling off of a cliff. And again, there's some illustrations she had done for the book, and you can see little plants illustrated along with this tea, and then also some of these illustrations she had done. And this is toward the end of her life here. This was, I believe, published after she had passed away, but I thought I'd include some bonus images that she had done that appeared in the American Indian magazine. And, you have a notable Plains chief depicted, with quite a magnificent headdress. And then, on the right, you have these different forms here of different feathers. And so this was an article by Charles A. Eastman, who was a Lakota, I believe. And, it accompanied his article, and you can see these different illustrations to go with it. Anywho, that's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed this look at some of her artwork. There's not too many instances where you can see a bunch of her art all in one go, but I think that she really deserves recognition as one of the earliest Native artists and designers, working in a contemporary situation. And, myself, I really look at her as somebody who laid the groundwork for a lot of success of other Native people to work as commercial artists and designers. And some of her students did go on to do more work. And when I found out about her work, I was really like, wow, somebody's thinking about the things that I'm thinking about, and this is over 100 years ago. and I really wish I could have a conversation with her, but I really look to her work and think about other ways we can be creative. She had a very sort of pan-Indian approach, which may not be the approach nowadays. I think a lot of times we're very much more cognizant of, being very conscientious of cultural differences and making sure that, negotiating how we represent other Native peoples and everything. But, I think she really did some amazing work under a very difficult time period. Anywho, thanks again, and I look forward to your questions, Jamigwich.
Yay, thank you so much, Neebin. That was amazing. I would like to now open the floor for questions here. So please don't forget to drop your questions, everybody, into the mix. We have the Q&A available, and I'm going to start. We've got 9 questions so far, so let's get rolling here. Upvote questions that you'd like to see answered. Okay, Neebin, we have a first question from anonymous attendee who says, how was it possible for her to study? Was she supported? How were the circumstances at that time for a First Nation woman?
Well, she did have some, patrons of sort that did see how talented she was. So when she was going to school, they saw her creative talent, and basically these wealthy white women did help with some of her education at the time. And then, she did become more successful as time went on as well. So there was, I think, something where, there's that sort of like patronism, like, the sort of white savior stuff was kind of going on at the time, but she also did receive, help in her journey that I think, was beneficial. But she was extremely talented. I mean, to see what she had done and how she was able to push and having these really major projects, I think speaks to her abilities.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's see what's the next question on the list. Do we have any idea? Phil Hassett asks, do we have any idea of where she was finding the source material she was drawing upon? Other Native people, books, artifacts in museums, photographs, art galleries, travel among different tribal groups, or something else?
So, some of this is conjecture on my part, but, she was in contact with other Native people, and, like with the boarding school era, you had a lot of people from different tribes suddenly being thrown together, right? And so you actually have a lot of like children being exposed to people of different cultures and things. And so I think that's a factor for one. She did, on one of her projects, she did go and illustrate people, I can't remember, was it Fort Berthold maybe? And I think she went and illustrated Native people for one. Of course, at the time there were also people doing like anthropological studies and, having papers and books on that. So I think it's reasonable to assume that she might have consulted some of that. With galleries and whatnot, like she had participated in a couple of like kind of expos and whatnot. So it seems like some of this stuff would be being depicted here and there, but it is a good question, and I'm not altogether sure of like the full range of what she might have been referencing or what even her access was. I really don't think it would be anything near to what we have today, where we really do have a much more in-depth access and understanding of different cultural traditions that we can access more easily through libraries and the internet.
Okay, let's see. TFF asks, is there still an active design culture by natives, maybe inspired by her?
You're looking at it. I mean, there's a number of Native scholars out there that are, writing about her. Yvonne Tiger is somebody who is writing about Angel DeCora, among some other people. And I had, I wanted to do this, but I didn't get a chance to do a kind of a list of different books and articles that should be consulted. So if somebody wants to message me about that or send me an email, I'd be happy to provide some recommended reading. There's as far as Native design today, it is so beautiful and broad, like it is incredible. There's so many people that are, working at all levels, whether they're working for their tribe, they're working within their communities, working at, like Nike and these other organizations, or teaching at design institutions. There's people with their design degrees out there with MFAs. And so that's like something that's really kind of exciting, is that the world of Native design is so broad and so many people are designing from their cultural traditions as well, and for their communities.
All right. Yeah, I like your answer, Neebin. You're looking at it. All right. Okay, let's see. Next one up. We have our own Stephen Calls asking, is there a biography or monograph? If not, you should write one.
Well, there's a book by Linda Wagoner called Firelight, Life of Angel DeCora, Winnebago Artist. And that's one that I've read, and, it was a really great book. But again, there's scholars like Yvonne Tiger and some other writers out there. And I definitely recommend, doing a little Google search. I think that there could be more books that are like, here's a beautiful picture book of like all of her work. Like I would love to see that, because, quite a bit of them, there's not always space to get into every art piece, right? So it would be so awesome to have like, here's this table book of like everything that we know that she's ever done.
Thank you so much. And Stephen Coles is working us with yet another question. Here we have one. The Indians book was such a massive project. Did it have any effect on popular culture or government policy? Was it popular among the general public or used as a regular reference? Good question.
I would assume that it was. I believe one of the presidents, and again, like I did write the article, but things fall out of the head. But one of the presidents did write like an intro to the book. So that's national. That's huge. That book had a very wide reach, I would believe, if you have the president of the United States writing for it.
Whoa. Yeah, I would think so. You don't remember which president? That's a little crazy. Yeah.
Let me look it up really quick.
Okay,
I'm
no
like,
worries. No worries.
because if I hope I'm not misquoting that, but I do know there was a connection to the president. Let me see if I can find.
Okay, no worries. We can use Google also. I hate to put it on you.
At least, he was at the very least aware of it. So we might have to double check what I said there. But I do know that there was an awareness and association of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that definitely indicates, I mean, if we have that high level of administration aware of the book, I would assume that indicates it was widespread at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, maybe, do you know how this is a question from me, the publication number, how many of the books were put into circulation?
I am not altogether sure.
Oh, somebody writes Woodrow Wilson, maybe. I don't know if they know that for sure, but
I don't think it was him. I think it was Theodore. Oh, someone just commented. Theodore Roosevelt endorsed the book.
There we go.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Laurel.
Thank you, Laurel. I'll update that. Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, it endorsed the book. So let's just say that. Okay, wow. Indicative of attention, I guess. Suzanne de Monchaux asks, are there any interviews recorded with Angel DeCora?
I don't know about that so much as there are some writings. She did a lot of presentations and spoke about different things. So I do have some some of these things on file. So with that conference photo that I showed you, she had written an article to go along with it. She also participated in a conference up in Canada. And so I have a paper for that. So if you're really, really interested and you want to see some of these things, send me a note. She also had done an autobiography, I think in one of the Indian craftsmen, if I remember right. So I have that available as well. So if you want to see some things that she said herself, I'd be happy to share. Now, I do want to note that, given the time period, there is going to be some assimilation language, there's going to be some internalized racism, but I think you can see how she's really trying to strive for the value of Native art, while navigating these different ideas or feelings.
Thank you so much. And thank you for pointing out the bit about the time period and the assimilationist and internalized racism.
Right, because there is so much you have all the suppression of people, and where people were trying to take nativeness away from Native people and make them like white people. So, there's so much that had happened at the time period, which, a lot could be said about. It's really difficult, very, very severe, real and recent land loss, people taken from their families, there's all kinds of stuff. So they were struggling with a lot at the time. So I think, we have to be fair to what they were going through.
Absolutely. Let's see. David Shaw asks, are there any preparatory drawings, etc., in your fab research?
I'm not altogether sure. I haven't, I'm kind of limited to I've had access to books and been able to scan different books. I own, one of these books, Old Indian Legends, myself. And I also have an old Harper's. So these are my little special things. And, a friend of mine had let me scan one of her books, and a previous employer let me scan a book that was at the museum. And so I'm a little bit limited to what's kind of come my way or what I've been able to find online and through archives. So I'm sure there's something out there, but, kind of remains to be seen and uncovered. And perhaps some other scholars have done better research. I know some people have gone here and there and everywhere.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And it's, at Letterform Archive, we're always interested in process work. So, but it does seem like, given that it was so long ago, and maybe her work wasn't as appreciated as some other non-Indigenous people's work, it may have been lost to history. So, scholars, let's dig it up if it's there, please. Craig Eliason, sorry if I ruined your name, Craig, asks, would Angel DeCora first have had exposure to different tribal cultures at the boarding school with the acknowledgement that students were forced to assimilate rather than express their cultures of origin? Or would the fellow students likely have shared her own tribal origins? Her later ventures into lettering that try to capture, Craig's answered says that it's already been answered. Okay, sorry about that.
And I can,
okay, you want to elaborate? Yeah.
Yeah, because when you think about when she was sent to, she's sent to Virginia, and she's from Nebraska. That's a really big distance where they travel days by train, right? So, you're going to be encountering different people in that sort of circumstance. And, I do think that she had this very, broad idea. And, that's the thing too with, I think other people have discussed this, and I'm sorry, I can't really cite sources, but when you had these people who were forming the Society of American Indians, a lot of them were boarding school educated. And so they started to form this sort of pan-Indian identity. And I think that influenced okay, now we're going to try to do all this, right? Join together and do all this, even though people are separate peoples. And nowadays, I think we all work together as tribal people, but we're also very proud and standing up for this is my culture. These are these things from my culture. And we also are, I think, a little more cognizant of appropriateness and appropriation, those sorts of conversations now. So there's some differences. It's not to say that, of course, like I've designed with other indigenous imagery outside of my tribe, but you know, there's different situation, different context today.
Okay, thanks for that addition to Craig's question and answer. Sharon D asked, how did Angel Decora die?
If I remember right, it was during the flu epidemic.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so she got sick and she got sick and died. But I think it was some sort of sickness like that.
Yikes. Okay, get vaccinated, everybody.
Right. I mean, that's the truth. When you think about, there's all of these really intelligent, creative people, and it is a huge loss. And present now with the COVID, epidemic, a lot of Native communities are among the highest vaccinated, but we did lose some very important people within our respective communities earlier on. But here in the Southwest, like the Navajo Nation really had some huge losses, and as a result of some of that, like a lot of Native communities have been distributing vaccines to people within their communities and outside, because we're such a small percentage of the population as Native people. I think around 5% in the US and around 3% in Canada, and so pretty small. So if we lose some of this really important knowledge, it can be lost forever.
Yeah, no, we were on that subject. Our Type West class has a Native Cherokee student, and he was pointing out that COVID actually took many of the elders who were the last, some of the last remaining Native speakers of Cherokee. So it's been really a hard-hitting impact on Native communities, especially. Okay, back to the questions. Let's try to be positive here. Rebecca Stees asks, I'm an Anglo elementary art teacher with Jicarilla Apache students. We are doing a graphic design unit. What kind of lesson would you have liked when you were a kid? My students love art and design.
Oh, and it's cool to see Leo Vicente join this conversation, because he is awesome. He's the one who went and got his MFA, and great designer, exhibition designer, type illustrator. So he definitely would be the one to connect with, and I definitely recommend. So guys, get in contact. But lesson that I would have liked as a kid, I was pretty hands-on. My mom was very, and my dad too. Both of them were very pro art and pro create, they're definitely for creating. And my mom definitely had things in the house that were by different Native artists, and stuff from our culture as well as others. And so those were some influences I had, and my mom would buy me craft kits and stuff. So I think at that age, there may not have been as many things that were as specifically culturally based, right? And so I think you have that hunger as a young person, and you could be teaching them tribally specific design language and culturally based understandings, and really run with that. So I think, starting with some very culturally specific and appropriate stuff would be great. So, and in the case of the Anglo teacher, connect with the community and see what you can work with them, because I think collaboration is really good. And it's really great if you have people from the culture working with the kids.
Great tip. Connect with the community and collaborate, and bring in people from the community to help out, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Got a couple more questions, and we have time for additional questions, people. So please drop them in the Q&A if you want to hear anything answered. Okay, Laurel Schwartz writes Theodore Roosevelt. So I guess that's answering the prior question. So we'll move down to Nat Losbaker, who says, I loved seeing the slide of the students at the school painting signs. Did Angel have any experience with sign painting? And are there any Native sign painters you can recommend researching?
Ooh, that's a pretty good question. I don't know if she did have experience sign painting or not. But this isn't exactly the same thing, but I really think look into native graffiti artists. There's so much cool stuff out there. Ooh, I forget the name of the group, but there's this one, it was like Neoglyphics, I think. And a bunch of Southwest tribes, I think, were coming together and doing, and some other people too, I think, were members as well. But yeah, the kind of lettering that is in there. And there's some really interesting untold stories of collaboration between, like cross-cultural things with like the hip hop community. So there's some really interesting things that are happening in ways, I don't know, I don't want to spoil any sort of surprises, but there's some stories out there just talking to like different people. There was this one native designer, oh, what is his name? He's Navajo. Give me a second. He does a lot of lettering that's inspired by graffiti. So Randyll Barton is somebody who I would say, take a look at what he's doing because it's really creative.
Randy L. Barton, E.L.
Yeah, Randyll Barton. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully I spelled that right. Okay.
And he's like, I referenced him in the article I did for Letterform Archive, but he's got some interesting hip hop connections there, and so do some other artists as well. So, I mean, there's so much that are doing really great lettering, out there. I think it's just hard to condense it sometimes.
Yeah. Good idea. I've also read about some native graffiti artists from Canada that were, I can't remember the guy's name either, but it sounded really amazing. Okay,
Oh, cool.
Let's see. Finally, David Jones, this is the last question that we have, unless anybody else has more. Her lettering work is outstanding. Have you seen anything approaching a full alphabet?
I have not, but you never know. And here's the thing too, like I didn't look at every single, I think there needs to be some research done on her work when she was at Carlisle and they're producing, these publications, because there's a number of letters that are unattributed. And it's hard to say, like, did she do them? Did the students do them? Like some of them, I was like, oh, I recognize that one. That's a letter that she did before, right? But I think that more research could be done in that regard, because there are more letter forms out there, more examples out there. And somebody could probably totally do like, here's all the initials, within these publications, and then to try to find out who did them. Like that would be a pretty cool project.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get some more native students in our Type West class next year who might be able to create a font based on some of her lettering. Wouldn't that be awesome? Okay. Oh, wow. Another couple questions just dropped. I guess when I threatened, people started typing. Leo Vicente says, great case study. Do you feel it's necessary to talk more about what not to do when taking on cultural projects?
Oh, absolutely. Like this is something I think it has a lot to do with the responsibility of being a designer, right? And being aware of, different issues of representation, the issues of misrepresentation. Because, I think even in some of the examples I pointed out of Angel DeCora's, there are illustrations where she's created inaccurate illustrations, right? Inaccurate depictions of Native people. I think she tried her best, but there's definitely things where it's going to give the viewer a misunderstanding of maybe the particular cultural community she's trying to portray, right? So even though she was Native, she herself, made some errors, you could say, right? I think there's some other things that we could get into as well. Like not all imagery and knowledge is for public consumption. There are things that even if you're a member of a tribe, you may not be privy to or have a right to. So there has to be a lot of kind of like introspection and learning about cultural appropriateness and dynamics, and talking to the right people too, depending on who you're working with. I do think it's multi-layered and not something that you can completely condense into the short time period. But I just want to remind everybody that there are hundreds of tribes within the United States and Canada. different, legal groups, like recognize Native people. And that's a lot of people, right? And so, there's a way to interact with communities. And it's going to be case by case basis too, as well.
Yeah, excellent question, excellent points. And I like the reminder that there is a responsibility in being a designer, and no matter what you're designing or who you're designing it for.
Yes.
So,
yes, it's doing your due diligence and being a good designer. Because like the sort of quick lazy route, that's not being a good designer, right? But so much of inappropriate imagery really functions from laziness.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, more questions keep coming. We have one from TFF again. How is your personal view on topics like Native design used by non-Native clients? Can this be okay, or is this straight cultural appropriation? What is your perspective on Native design?
I think a lot of the circumstances where people are doing Native design, it's like not Native at all, or it's like a misunderstanding of things, or not really done right. So that's where I'm like, why would you want that? I feel like if you're going to be using cultural imagery or using something like as a mascot, think about why. Like if there's a disconnection from Native people, think about why. Are Native people benefiting? Are Native people making money from it? No, why not? And so that's the thing, is we do have to realize the context of colonialism, where Native people's culture was taken from them, like literally, right? You have all these museums that have had, while ceremony was made illegal, white colonial institutions were taking the objects for themselves and hoarding them away, right? So you have this really weird dynamic that we need to be aware of, that people need to be really mindful. There are some situations where I think maybe, like there's the one team, the Seahawks, the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of Natives are fans of that, and I like it too. I think given the region, and they were referencing a mask and a collection for the logo as well. And I think that's kind of interesting, and I don't really think that that's wrong. That seems to me like it seems to sit okay with a lot of Native people. Like, again, I don't know everybody's opinion, but I think that's something where it's not like a cheap depiction, a cheap stereotype of a Native person. It's like much more nuanced. So that's something where I'm like, well, I think that one's all right.
Okay. Yeah, I grew up in Seattle, so I know the Seahawks well. Anyways, the great answer.
Oh.
It's true. Oh yeah.
Okay. Someone made a note and said the local tribes were involved in the project as well.
Okay.
That's well, great,
yeah.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, so it's not the same case as like the Redskins or something like that.
There's some more crazy history, because Angel DeCora's husband was sort of used as an excuse for that, and he wasn't even Native, like he's playing Indian. So there's some weird stuff that's involved with that.
Okay, let's see. So Lauren Schaffer posts a link that's not a question, but people should check that out. It sounds like an interesting link. Think before you appropriate is the concept behind the link. So good. Okay, Anonymous wants to know, who makes your clothes, Neebin?
I knew someone would ask me this. I knew it. So I was like, I'm going to write down. So I'm wearing a ribbon shirt that is by New Sun Sage Designs. I bought it from a lady during the free Indian market, and the tag said Wanya, and I might be saying that wrong, but new ribbon shirt. I was like, gotta get something new. This was a gift from a friend by a Navajo artist, and I don't know the name of the artist, but the artist was at Pathways, which was at Buffalo Thunder. So I need to track down the name. So if you know, let me know. And I should have remembered who did these ones. I have the name, I could look it up, but I'm not always good with names. But yeah, I do love wearing Native fashion. I think it's an important part of sharing and supporting Native artists, and then being proud of being Indigenous. And, it's this cool little cross flow that I think it's important.
Okay, glad somebody noticed that and pointed it out, because that is, you do have a great outfit on today.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, I think that's it for the solid questions. Thank you so much, Neebin. This was amazing. And Neebin, you've said a couple times that people should contact you if they have further questions or want to get some of your resources for further study. Do you mind sharing a link or something that people can reach you if you want to type that into the chat?
I'll type my email into the chat. So
No.
there's that email, and I'm going to give an alternate as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. And reminder to everybody that this recording will be out very soon. And when it comes out, there will be captions on it. Somebody had inquired about captions before. Unfortunately, we can't do live captions, but there will
No,
be captions.
I'm sorry, I just had to interject here. No, there will not be any captions on the audio that goes out today.
Oh,
just
okay.
gonna be
But
the
later
video.
on when the video comes. Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
Well, the video and the audio from this lecture that's recorded will not have closed captions. That will have to come later. All right, thanks.
Thank you so much, Skilla, for clarifying. Okay, round of applause, everybody, for Neebin. And tune in a couple weeks for our next lecture with Sophie Beyer. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, looks like you're getting lots of appreciation.
Yeah, I
in
want to
the chat,
save that.
Neebin.
I'm going to save that
Oh yeah.
transcript.
You'll get a transcript of that as well as everything else. So I like the way that all that gets saved. It's always fun to read through the
Yeah,
chat.
thanks everybody for joining and listening in today. Appreciate sharing with you all.
And don't forget to read Neebin's article for Letterform Archive as well, if you haven't already. All right, awesome. Anything else you want to tell people while they're signing off, Neebin? We're but some people
No,
hang
I
on
think
until the end because they know all the juicy stuff comes at the end.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't think I do have anything crazy. I wish I had a few more. There's some other art that I know is out there, but I wasn't able to include. So as much as was shown today, there's still more out there. And I think there's more going to be uncovered. Like I was so excited to see the one portrait, you know, because I had never seen that before, like a couple days ago when I was like, I'm preparing for this. And so I'm excited to see, like, with everybody's hard work out there. There was like some sort of talk this weekend, and I just was so busy I wasn't able to make it, but there were some other people honoring the life of Angel DeCora. So there's going to be more scholarship out there, I am sure, probably more recordings, like if people are interested. So I would definitely Google search that and see what comes up, because there's going to be some good stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people really appreciated about your talk today is the way that you tied in a lot of the history with what Native people are doing today, design-wise and art-wise. I think that's super valuable. So any extra information that, you have or can share about that would be super duper. Totally awesome. Yeah, I'm getting some messages now from people saying that they really appreciated hearing about contemporary Native designers as well. So
yeah, and that's something like, potentially follow up, because there are some really good artists out there. Like, I try my hand at things, like I'm a designer myself, but I am aware of some really good people working in lettering. So there's just so much, like when it comes to like contemporary Native designers, I don't, there isn't like a book of like, here's this like portfolio, showcase, how we love that in graphic design, right? There still needs to be some books like that. And there could be books on multiple subjects. Like I've met so many Navajo or Dene designers that are so good. And so many of them. And I'm like, there's a story there that needs to be told, like something about how the culture is, influencing this. And there's like generations of designers. I mean, like decades, right? Decades of designers working. So there's a lot of stories that are not told, but I think we definitely need people to tell the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting a lot of requests here for follow-up with Native, contemporary Native designers. So we can talk later, Neebin, if you have any hot tips to follow up on, because you know, we're always looking for great speakers and like you. Yay.
Oh yeah, yeah, no,
Okay.
that's definitely, like, even Leo would be cool to get.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay. Gonna get some contact information out of you later on. All right, folks, this is it. Now we're signing up for reels. See everybody in a couple weeks for Sophie Byer. And thank you again, Neebin. That was fantastic.
Thank you, everybody.